seen all the Best Picture nominees, so let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. What is it? Top Gun Maverick is a legacy sequel to an 80s classic, 36 years in the making. Like the original Top Gun, it's an action drama about naval fighter pilots, the best of the best. And unlike the original Top Gun, this one has, a plot. Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell, played once again by Tom Cruise, is called back to Top Gun flight school as an instructor to help the new young fighter pilots, among them Miles Teller and Glenn Powell, navigate a dangerous and difficult mission blowing up a uranium enrichment plant in an unnamed hostile country. It's an extremely clean premise with crystal clear, painstakingly defined stakes and wildly satisfying payoffs. Who is it made by? It was directed by Joe Kosinski from a screenplay credited to 5 screenwriters, most notably among them Chris McQuarrie, who has become the unofficial Tom Cruise whisperer in the last decade or so. It was produced by legendary producer Jerry Bruckheimer, who I was surprised to learn didn't have a single Oscar nomination before this movie. It was also produced by Tom Cruise himself, who, with respect to those previously mentioned, is probably most responsible for getting this movie to the screen than anyone else. How has it been received? It had a fairly historic box office run, finishing 5th all-time in domestic box office. It's been pretty universally praised by critics, and in addition to its Best Picture nomination, it's nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Song, Best Sound, Best Editing, and Best Visual Effects. Who would like this? People who love the original Top Gun. Everything Top Gun has going for it, the things that made it a classic, Top Gun Maverick also has in spades. People who don't like the original Top Gun. With respect, I think the original Top Gun is mostly just vibes, It's powered by cool action scenes, great music, Tom Cruise's charisma, and how incredible Miramar looks during sunset. And like I said, Top Gun Maverick has all that, but also has a lot more to recommend about it. People who haven't seen the original Top Gun. Yes, there are certainly moments that will land better if you've seen the original, particularly some involving Val Kilmer, but it gives you all the context you need, including some brief, well-placed flashbacks. For those keeping score at home, that's people who love the original, people who don't love the original, and people who haven't seen the original. So basically everyone would like this. More in part 2. I've seen all the Best Picture nominees, so let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. I saw an awfully lot of snide comments about this getting nominated for its screenplay, and I guess it's not an unfair assumption that an action movie starring Tom Cruise wouldn't have the most adept writing, and yet to those people I say, you're fucking crazy. This is one of the best written movies of the year, full stop. I dream of movies with a premise this clean. I dream of movies with this level of clarity of storytelling. Whether it's the opening set piece or the story proper, like the big mission, the movie tells you exactly what's going to happen. It explains exactly what needs to be done. It explains exactly why it's going to be very hard. And it explains exactly what's at risk if these pilots fail at various points in the mission. Premise, objective, stakes. It either shows you or tells you everything you need to know about these characters and about this mission, and nothing that you don't. There's not an ounce of fat on this. I can hear an argument that the love story, which takes up, 10 or 15 minutes of screen time max, that feels a little tacked on, but Jennifer Connelly sells the hell out of it, and Tom Cruise, even at 60, remains ridiculously charming when flirting. A tweet I saw put it best. It's tight as a drum and pays out like a slot machine. When they get to the mission, when they get to the third act / late second act, everything that happens is incredibly tense, because again, they've painstakingly showed you how the steps of this mission work, how hard each step will be to pull off, and what's at stake at every point along the way. And the shorthand they use to make sure you're clear on what's happening, Miracle 1, Miracle 2, it just works. It's extremely compelling, but also has incredible clarity because they did the legwork in Act 1 and Act 2. The last half hour of this movie is ridiculously, stupidly satisfying. And that's not an accident. The fact that everyone in the theater feels like standing up and cheering at the end, and the fact that everyone is bouncing out of the theater feeling light as air as the credits roll, that's not an accident either. It's because the setup and the stakes were so well laid out. This movie is constructed with surgical precision to maximize the payoff and maximize how satisfying the ending is. Again, tight as a drum, pays out like a slot machine, and just, it's really great writing. It just works. I don't tell you, it just works. More in part 3. I've seen all the Best Picture nominees, so let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. I'm not saying there's not cheese here. It's a Top Gun movie. Of course there's going to be cheese. The first movie was built upon a foundation of cheese. But here in Maverick, it's just the right amount for me. That cheesy ass gong that leads into that cheesy ass 80s guitar riff. Yes, give me that all day. I need that. When the gong plays over the opening credits of faceless guys on an aircraft carrier giving thumbs up and various other hand gestures, but just before it gets to the guitar riff part, it switches to Danger Zone. I was vibrating in my seat in the theater. I was so excited. It cuts to Danger Zone in the opening scene because they are saving the guitar riff for about minute 15. Admiral Ed Harris is throwing heat, dressing down Maverick for being a Maverick, and as soon as Ed Harris says the words Top Gun, the first time we hear those words in the movie, as soon as those words escape his lips, the gong plays.
You've been called back to Top Gun. Sir.
The conversation goes on for another 30-40 seconds. Ed Harris tells Tom Cruise, "Your kind is dying." Yeah, he's talking about pilots, but he's also talking about like movie stars and star-driven movies and even the theatrical experience in general. Because yeah, we have unmanned drones and we have streaming services now. So who needs pilots? Who needs theaters? Who needs movie stars? And Tom Cruise says, "Maybe so, sir. Maybe my kind is dying, but not today." And then it cuts to Tom Cruise on a f***ing motorcycle, driving alongside a f***ing F-18 taking off, and he's bathed in golden San Diego sun like a f***ing god, and the f***ing guitar riff plays. Tom Cruise is saving movies. I don't give a shit that it's cheesy. You don't like this? You can leave. Give me this all day. I need this in my life. Later in the movie, in keeping with the "your kind is dying" idea that Ed Harris brought up, later in the movie, Tom Cruise tells the pilots, "Time is your greatest enemy." Again, he literally means they need to fly the mission quickly, but also like, Tom Cruise is getting old. Feels an awful lot like he's talking about himself. He's not going to be able to keep making these movies forever. Is it on the nose? I could not give less of a shit that it's on the nose. It rules. So you know the Best Picture nominees, so let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. This is nominated for Best Editing, and I really hope it wins. It might. Everything Everywhere All at Once also might. I get the argument for Everything Everywhere All at Once's editing, especially like the sequences where you see a ton of multiverses in quick succession, but the editing here is a huge factor into why this movie works so well. The opening action set piece, what are we really looking at? We're looking at Tom Cruise concentrating really hard, pushing his stick forward little by little, and then watching numbers on a screen climb and approach 10. That's all we're really looking at, and yet it's the most compelling action sequence of the year. One of them, at least. That's the magic of editing, baby! Much later, when they're doing the big mission in the third act, they do what they do, and then they climb out of Coffin Corner, and then surface-to-air missiles come into play. Quick side note, I love that even though they painstakingly explained what every step of this mission would look like a good 3 or 4 times, they always kind of yada-yada'd what happens when they climb out of the canyon. So the surface-to-air missiles feel like a bit of a surprise, but at the same time, yeah, of course the surface-to-air missiles are going to engage as soon as they fly that high. The movie tells you 1 + 1 several times, but never actually says 2. And then the surface-to-air missiles fire at them in the third act, and you're like, holy shit, 1 + 1 is 2. But that's not the point. The point here is the editing in this sequence. It gets so chaotic so quickly. There are surface-to-air missiles flying everywhere. Everyone is dropping flares. Everyone is doing evasive maneuvers. Everyone is calling out to help to everyone else. And the editing here is top f***ing notch. The events being depicted are incredibly chaotic. The depiction of the events is not. It's controlled, it's compelling, and most importantly, it's clear. And obviously that goes for the multiple dogfighting training sequences earlier in the movie. It's always clear who's in what plane, where this plane is relative to that plane, who's firing at who, etc. Clarity is not a given here, but Eddie Hamilton and Chris Benzen's immaculate editing makes it look easy.